Jake Monroe was the golden boy. Rachel Bloom was the quiet outsider. Elizabeth Hartwell was the teacher everyone trusted, until all three became the center of a murder that shocked an entire town. In the quiet town of Willow Creek, nestled deep in the wooded valleys of Oregon, life had always followed a predictable rhythm. The streets were lined with Victorian homes, the community was tight-knit, and everyone knew everyone's name. It was the kind of place where scandal felt like something from a television show, not real life. People smiled at their neighbors, waved to passing cars, and sent casseroles to anyone going through hard times. Crime was almost non-existent, so when tragedy eventually struck, no one was prepared, least of all for how deeply it would fracture the illusion of their perfect little town. Elizabeth Hartwell seemed to embody everything Willow Creek valued. At 32, she was the picture of success, grace, and charm. She moved to the town just 5 years earlier and quickly became a fixture in the community. With her polished appearance and friendly demeanor, she immediately stood out among the faculty at Willow Creek High School. Students loved her. Parents praised her. Other teachers respected her. She wasn't just an English teacher. She was a mentor, a leader, and to many a friend. In her classroom, walls were covered with famous literary quotes, student artwork, and photos from drama club productions. She had a way of making even the quietest student feel seen. She remembered birthdays, encouraged creativity, and often stayed after school to help students with college essays or rehearse for plays. Her passion for teaching was infectious. Under her guidance, the school's drama program flourished, winning state-level competitions and drawing in students who had never considered stepping on stage before. Outside of school, Elizabeth lived a quiet life. She rented a small but beautiful cabin just outside town, surrounded by forest and silence. On weekends, she could be found browsing local bookstores or hosting poetry nights at the community center. She didn't date publicly, which fueled some idle gossip among locals, but nothing serious. Most just assumed she was too focused on her career to settle down. It added to her mystique, the elegant, kind-hearted teacher who kept to herself. But not everyone saw the same version of Elizabeth. Some students, particularly those in her drama club or advanced literature classes, noticed something else, a certain warmth in her attention, a lingering glance, occasional inside jokes that felt too personal. There were whispers, the kind that never quite made it to the surface. Whispers of favoritism, of too close friendships with older students, especially boys. But there was never any proof, just gossip, and in Willow Creek, people didn't spread rumors about someone they respected. It didn't seem right. Still, a few parents grew uncomfortable. One even approached the principal anonymously, concerned about how often her son was texting with Miss Hartwell late at night. The school reviewed it briefly but found nothing inappropriate. Elizabeth was too smart, too careful. If lines were being crossed, she made sure no one could see it clearly. And besides, it was hard to imagine someone so admired doing something so wrong. Looking back, there were signs. The late-night drama rehearsals, the private meetings in her classroom with the blinds drawn, the way some students talked about her, not like a teacher but someone they were emotionally entangled with. At the time, it all seemed harmless, even charming. What no one could have guessed was how quickly admiration could twist into obsession. That beneath Elizabeth's poised and professional exterior was a dangerous imbalance of power, one that would lead to manipulation, betrayal, and eventually murder. The people of Willow Creek had placed her on a pedestal, but the higher someone stands, the farther they fall. As autumn crept over Willow Creek, the days grew shorter and the shadows longer, but no one sensed the darkness quietly taking root just beneath the surface. Elizabeth Hartwell was still the beloved teacher, smiling in the hallways and organizing school plays with tireless energy. Her students laughed around her, hung on her every word, and competed for her approval. To outsiders, nothing seemed amiss, but behind her calm, professional smile, Elizabeth was leading a double life that no one suspected. Not her co-workers, not the principal, not even the students closest to her. Jake Monroe was one of her senior students, charismatic, confident, and popular. At 17, he was the star of the soccer team and the kind of student who could charm his way out of any trouble. But Jake had a past he tried to keep hidden. His father had left years ago. His mother worked long hours at the local diner, and he spent most of his nights alone. Elizabeth noticed him early in the school year. He was bright, opinionated, and emotionally intense. He lingered after class, asked questions that had nothing to do with literature, and always seemed to be looking for more of her attention. It started innocently enough. Extra help after school, private discussions about his home life, encouragement to join the drama club to channel his energy. Elizabeth presented herself as a mentor, someone who wanted to help him realize his potential. But as the weeks went on, the boundaries blurred. They began texting, then calling, then meeting outside of school under the pretense of working on his college application essays. She invited him to her cabin under the excuse of reviewing scripts for the upcoming play. It was always justifiable, just enough to avoid suspicion. But eventually the connection turned physical. What began as comfort and attention spiraled into something far more dangerous. Jake became addicted to the secrecy, the thrill and the idea that someone like Elizabeth could want him. He confided in no one. He believed what they had was real, something special, something that would last. Elizabeth, however, saw it differently. She was careful, always reminding him to keep their meetings secret. She warned him that no one would understand, that people would ruin everything if they found out. At school, she kept her distance, never giving him any more attention than she gave to others. The contrast confused and frustrated Jake. Then Elizabeth began pulling away. By November, she had grown nervous. There were whispers, students hinting at things they shouldn't know, a few strange looks from fellow teachers, and one anonymous note left in her mailbox at school. She had no idea who had written it, but the message was clear. Someone was watching. That fear made her cautious. She stopped answering Jake's calls. She canceled their meetings. She grew cold and distant during rehearsals, and her smiles no longer reached her eyes. Jake didn't take it well. He grew more possessive, more erratic. He began showing up at her cabin uninvited, accusing her of using him. His schoolwork suffered. Teachers noticed the shift in his behavior, but when questioned, he claimed he was just tired or stressed. Still, the tension between him and Elizabeth was growing harder to hide. What neither of them knew was that someone else had already discovered everything. Another student had seen the messages, had watched them in secret, had listened through walls and followed them into the woods one night when they thought no one was near. Elizabeth thought she was in control. She believed she could end the affair quietly and go back to her normal life. But secrets never stay buried in small towns, and this one was about to explode. What began in shadows was moving towards something far more dangerous than either Elizabeth or Jake could have imagined. As winter settled over Willow Creek, the days became colder, and the small town grew even quieter. Snow blanketed the rooftops, holiday lights began appearing in windows, and students at Willow Creek High buzzed about winter break. But beneath the surface, emotions were beginning to boil, dangerously and invisibly. Rachel Bloom was not the kind of student who stood out. She was quiet, reserved, and spent most of her time in the art room or the school library. A senior like Jake Monroe, she had always been a good student, thoughtful, talented, and rarely in trouble. She had joined the drama club in her sophomore year, and quickly became one of Elizabeth Hartwell's most dependable students. She handled props, wrote short scripts, and occasionally acted in small roles. While others admired Elizabeth from a distance, Rachel felt something deeper. She idolized her teacher, watched her every move, memorized the way she spoke, and clung to every compliment Elizabeth ever gave her. What no one knew, not even Elizabeth, was that Rachel's admiration had slowly turned into obsession. She began spending more time near Elizabeth, offering to help with grading, staying late to clean up rehearsals, walking with her to the parking lot. To most people, it looked like a student eager to please her favorite teacher. But in Rachel's mind, it was something more. She convinced herself that their bond was special, that Elizabeth felt the same connection. She believed deep down that her teacher cared about her the way she cared about her teacher. That belief gave her purpose, and when she thought of the future, it always included Elizabeth. Then she noticed Jake Monroe. At first, she tried to ignore it. She watched from a distance as Jake lingered in Elizabeth's classroom after hours, as he laughed with her during rehearsals, as they shared glances that seemed too long, too private. Something about it didn't sit right with Rachel. She started watching more closely, paying attention to every movement, every interaction. She noticed the way Jake's mood seemed to shift depending on Elizabeth's behavior, the way he seemed irritated one moment, desperate the next. It didn't take long for Rachel to start putting the pieces together. Then came the night it all changed. She followed them. She had noticed Elizabeth leaving rehearsal early and Jake slipping out 10 minutes later. She waited, then crept after them, her footsteps silent in the snow. She watched from the tree line as Jake entered Elizabeth's cabin. She stayed there for nearly 2 hours, her fingers frozen, her heart burning. That night shattered everything Rachel believed. In her mind, Elizabeth had betrayed her. The woman she had worshipped, the one she thought saw her, had chosen someone else. Worse, Elizabeth had lied. She had manipulated both of them. Rachel's feelings twisted. What had once been admiration turned to jealousy, then resentment, then fury. But Rachel wasn't reckless. She didn't confront anyone. Instead, she started collecting evidence. She took photos, screenshots of messages she managed to intercept from an unlocked computer in the drama room. She recorded a short video through a cracked door during a late rehearsal, capturing just enough to confirm what she already knew. She didn't just want revenge, she wanted control. Rachel approached Jake slowly, carefully. He was angry, heartbroken, and confused. She offered sympathy at first, then truth. She showed him what she had found and told him everything she had seen. The two of them, once strangers, now shared a common wound. Rachel nurtured that pain. She fed it, reminded him how they had both been used, and slowly she planted the idea that would change everything. Jake, still blinded by emotion, didn't realize what was happening. Rachel wasn't healing with him. She was pulling him into her plan. Together they formed a secret alliance built not on trust, but on shared betrayal. And soon that alliance would become a pact, a deadly one. The snowstorm hit Willow Creek hard on the night of February 14, 2019. Streets were nearly impassable. Power flickered across the town, and most residents huddled indoors, unaware of the horror unfolding just beyond the tree line. Elizabeth Hartwell had planned to spend the evening alone at her cabin. It was a habit of hers, escaping the noise and stress of school life by retreating into the woods. She told coworkers she was taking a short break, just a weekend to herself before the spring semester picked up. No one thought twice about it. But Elizabeth wasn't alone. Jake Monroe knew her routine. He knew about the unlocked back door, the wine glasses in the cupboard, the spare key hidden beneath the woodpile. He had been there before, dozens of times. And now, with Rachel Bloom beside him, they returned not as visitors but with a deadly purpose. The plan was simple, at least in their minds. Elizabeth had to be silenced. Rachel had convinced Jake that if they didn't act, the consequences would destroy them both. Sooner or later the relationship would be exposed and they would be the ones blamed. She told him Elizabeth had manipulated them, used them, and was now trying to walk away clean. Rachel had been careful, methodical. She wore gloves, brought a burner phone, wore a hoodie and scarf to avoid cameras. She had thought through everything, except how messy murder truly is. What exactly happened inside the cabin that night remains unclear, but the crime scene told a chilling story. Elizabeth's car was found the next morning by a passerby, parked oddly on the side of the snow-covered road. Its driver's door was slightly open, her purse still inside, and her phone locked and tucked beneath the passenger seat. Police were notified, and within hours a search was launched. Friends and family told authorities about the cabin. When officers arrived, they found signs of a struggle: broken glass, blood smeared along the floorboards, and a trail of footprints leading out into the woods. It took 2 days to find her. Elizabeth's body was discovered in a shallow grave beneath a collapsed snowbank, less than a mile from the cabin. She had been stabbed 27 times. Her hands were bruised and scraped, defensive wounds showing she had fought back with everything she had. There was blood beneath her fingernails, pieces of torn fabric clutched in one hand, and a look of frozen terror on her face. The brutality shocked even the most seasoned officers. This was no quick, impulsive act. It had been personal, rage-fueled. Investigators scoured the cabin and quickly found clues. In the fireplace, charred remains of paper and plastic caught their attention. Forensics later recovered fragments of a cheap prepaid phone, burner style, with part of a SIM card intact. It had been used to text Elizabeth the night of her murder. When digital forensics experts restored fragments of the phone's memory, they found one chilling message: "Tonight, after 10, she'll be alone." The number was traced to a purchase made at a gas station miles outside town. Surveillance footage showed Rachel Bloom buying the phone. The timestamp matched the date the texts were sent. When police brought her in for questioning, she denied everything, claimed she didn't know about the murder, that the phone was for a school project, that someone must have stolen it. But the lies began to crack when Jake Monroe was taken into custody hours later. Police had found him wandering the woods near his home, disoriented, with cuts along his arms and hands. Under questioning, he unraveled quickly. The pressure, the guilt, and Rachel's manipulation all came spilling out. He admitted he had been at the cabin, admitted he had been involved, but pointed the finger at Rachel as the mastermind. Rachel, when confronted with Jake's confession, said it was the opposite. The trial of Rachel Bloom and Jake Monroe gripped the entire state. For months, headlines screamed about the twisted love triangle, the gruesome murder, and the dark underbelly of a seemingly perfect small town. People who had once praised Elizabeth Hartwell now questioned how much they truly knew her. Was she a predator, a victim, or both? The courtroom became a stage for unraveling not just a murder, but the fragile illusions that had protected everyone involved. Jake was the first to break. After his arrest, he quickly confessed to the affair with Elizabeth, admitting it had started during the fall semester and escalated into a full-blown secret relationship. He claimed that Elizabeth had promised to be with him once he turned 18, but had recently started ignoring him, pulling away, and acting like nothing had ever happened. He said he felt discarded, lied to, and manipulated. According to Jake, Rachel had seen everything and confronted him with proof, photos, texts, even a short video. She offered him a solution. If they exposed Elizabeth, they'd both be punished. But if she were gone, no one would know. Rachel painted the murder as necessary, not just for revenge, but for survival. Jake said he didn't want to go through with it, but Rachel pressured him, insisted he help her or she'd turn everything over to the police. He described the night of the murder in chilling detail, how Rachel handed him the knife, how they confronted Elizabeth, and how things spiraled out of control when she fought back. Rachel's version of the story was entirely different. She admitted to finding out about the affair, but claimed she was horrified by it. She said Jake had become violent and unstable, and that she feared he would hurt Elizabeth. She told the court she only met with him to gather information, hoping to expose what was happening. She denied planning anything and insisted that Jake acted alone. According to Rachel, he lured her to the cabin under false pretenses, then forced her to help cover it up afterward. She claimed she had been manipulated by Jake just as Elizabeth had manipulated both of them. The prosecution, however, had more than just their words. Investigators recovered Rachel's journal from her bedroom, hidden beneath a loose floorboard. What they found inside shocked even seasoned detectives. Dozens of pages were filled with obsessive thoughts about Elizabeth. There were detailed entries about her clothing, her smile, her scent. But the most damning part came toward the end. Handwritten outlines of possible ways to end things, to make her pay, and to remove the threat. The entries were dated weeks before the murder. That journal changed everything. The defense argued that Rachel was mentally unwell, that her writings were fantasy, not plans, but combined with her purchase of the burner phone, the recovered texts, and the timeline of events, the jury saw something far more sinister. A premeditated act fueled by obsession, jealousy, and betrayal. Jake, in a desperate attempt to reduce his sentence, testified against Rachel. His testimony, along with physical evidence, sealed both of their fates. In the end, neither one escaped justice. Jake Monroe was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Rachel Bloom received the same. In the aftermath, Willow Creek was left shattered. The town that once idolized Elizabeth Hartwell now struggled with the complexity of her legacy. She had crossed a line, taken advantage of her position, and ultimately paid for it with her life. The students she had mentored, the lives she had touched, were left confused and broken. No one came out of the tragedy unchanged. Not the school, not the families, not the quiet town that believed something like this could never happen to them. What began as a secret affair had spiraled into betrayal, manipulation, and cold-blooded murder, and in the end, 3 lives were destroyed, 1 in the grave, 2 behind bars, and a town forever haunted by the truth.